Welcome back. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says G20 foreign ministers have agreed that countries in conflict should abide by international and humanitarian laws. Lamola gave the closing address at the two-day foreign ministers meeting at Nasrec Expo Center in Johannesburg under the theme Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability. The gathering was the first during South Africa's G20 presidency. Over 100 G20 meetings will take place throughout the year.
The meeting reiterated that all states must act in a manner consistent with the purpose and principles of the UN Charter. Affirmed that all parties in conflicts must comply with their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law. Guided by these principles, there was agreement to support all efforts towards a just peace in Ukraine, Palestine, Sudan, the DRC, and other major conflicts across the globe.
Lamola says the United States has not boycotted the G20 Foreign Ministers Meeting. According to the minister, a representative of that country attended the meeting. Earlier in the month, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he would not be attending the meeting because he did not agree with the themes of South Africa's presidency of the G20. A diplomat based in South Africa represented America at the G20 meeting.
They have not boycotted the South African G20. What has happened is that Mr. Rubio, who is my counterpart from the US, has stated that he will not attend, and you are aware of the reasons that he has stated. But they have still delegated somebody at a particular level to attend. And in this meeting, we had the charge d'affaires from the USA mission or embassy in South Africa, Ms. Dana Brown, who participated on behalf of the USA. So in the G20, we have a troika, and in the troika, we have Brazil as the outgone president of the G20, and the other member of the troika is ourselves as the current chair, and also the incoming chair. So the United States of America participated in that capacity, and they participated throughout and left when all delegates left.
Joining us to talk about these developments is Dr. Kashif Khan, who's an associate professor in the Department of Economics and Finance at Alatu International University. A very good evening to you, Dr. Khan. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess I really want to find out from your perspective, what's at the center of the seeming worsening relations between South Africa and the United States? Is it having taken the case against Israel to the ICJ? Is it the misinformation around the Expropriation Act? What lies at the heart?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be with you. I just heard a few minutes back that, from the United States, US has not denied attending this meeting. Rather, I don't think it's true, because there's a common objective of before we conduct this G20 meeting, there is a discussion between the G20 members for the common objectives going to be discussed in the following meeting. And that happened in the Biden administration. But that actually the scenario has been changed after this Trump has come into power. And we have to understand the chronology, actually. This is not just South Africa is being labeled, as we hear about the white, white owning the farmlands. But it has to do, as you rightly mentioned, about the ICJ, actually. That ICJ was the entire Israeli, the Prime Minister Netanyahu brought to, ICJ, or the attempt was led by South Africa, actually, one of the key members. And this all coming from there. And it's not the first time when, the Trump government has tried to put sanctions or got angry with how the ICJ or ICC works. But rather, this is an attempt of Trump to deglobalize, I would rather say, it in the pursuit of America First policy. So, and which the globalization which I'm discussing that began after the Cold War, actually, in the early 90s. And I believe that Trump, as businessman, thinks that these all globalization or the globalization, led institutions actually work on trade, governance, social action are not working in the interest of United States. So he is not happy with, and that comes the ICJ. So he is basically trying to dismantle the globalization process, and I believe that it's not only the Israeli kind of thing, but also it has to do with the de-dollarization. I believe that because BRICS and South Africa, particularly being a member of BRICS, is promoting or stepping towards de-dollarization, and we happen to hear a lot actually in the last, particularly after this Russia-Ukraine war, after the Russia, the sanctions were put on Russia, that they even began talking about the international settlement, financial settlement system, which is to say, I mean, to replace the SWIFT. So, and we all know that before Trump, came into or took an oath, he began talking about, sanctioning the BRICS member. So this not only this, ICJ, I mean, but it has to do with the BRICS. It has to do with the de-dollarization, and it has to do with international financial system. And we have to also consider the background of Trump being a businessman. I personally believe that it would be quite hilarious to say that uh, Trump cares about South Africa. I don't, or I mean, particularly the whites living in South Africa. I don't think so. I don't think that Trump really knows much about that. Uh, I think it's more, or other than what he has been, dictated by Elon Musk, the South African born billionaire. So and that too because of certain rhetorics said by the opposition party, like Julius, based on that, or who has, or being used as a tool. I believe that. So these developments is not just coming from nowhere. It's a proper process, and proper, there's a lot of thought process behind actually. And I think South Africa, the either the only country, and the probably I mean the first country where G20 is going to be held, it is indeed a setback, I would rather say, because uh, and I would also see uh, Trump is looking at BRICS vis-a-vis G7.
Mm. And BRICS is another interesting sore thorn that would be in Trump's shoe right now as well. So as you're speaking, Dr. Khan, about, the attempt to de-globalize, the attempt or to ensure that the de-dollarization doesn't even happen, one couldn't have foreseen you. There's no magic psychic ball to see how elections will turn out. That November elections in the US, that it would have been Trump that wins that again. But do you think there's an element of the rest of the world where there are other countries who obviously also condemned what's going on in the Middle East, in Gaza specifically, but didn't take the actions that South Africa took? Do you think perhaps those other countries who were a little bit more, who were vocal but not as much, didn't take tangible action in kind of preparation of, in case we have another Trump administration, and how he might retaliate for those who go against the United States' ally, Israel?
That's very true, and that's quite shocking as well. But I would like to, and particularly, I guess you are mentioning about the Middle East, which and particularly the Muslim countries. I mean, I definitely think that you are, questioning about the Middle East, and I do believe that yes, there has been a lot of criticism from all over the world, and particularly the not, from the common people. But I would rather appreciate what the South African government, the coalition, government took an initiative to form the Hague, group, and it is quite interesting to see that now the along with Malaysia, countries are now joining and trying to uphold the ruling of the ICC. South Africa, yes, very dearly stood up, for the cause of the Palestinians, and I think that's one of the reasons, as I rightly mentioned earlier, that why the government, the United States, is not likely to attend this G20 meeting.
And as you're mentioning as well, there were other countries such as Malaysia who also came to the charge too, but South Africa, of course, leading that. And what South Africa did by many standards and according to many people was quite noble and allowed as many atrocities, and it is allowed to go to the ICJ, to The Hague, to report such atrocities as we've seen done countless times when it comes to atrocities on the African continent. But these institutions like the ICJ and the ICC that we are able to go to in such times, did we perhaps, as South Africa, as noble as it was, as correct and legitimate as it may have been for the South African government, did we perhaps shoot ourselves in the foot in terms of geopolitical relations, but more so our relations with the United States?
Okay, so if this is the case, then what about Canada? What about Mexico? What about Denmark? So I think, we have a whole list. Canada didn't go to ICJ. Mexico didn't go to ICJ. China didn't go to ICJ. So I think it has to do a lot with how. No, that was not the mistake, by the way. Or if you call it a mistake, or perhaps you shoot out at you said yourself. No, I don't think so. I think that had to do a lot with one more point I would like to bring into into your attention, that Trump believes that South Africa, relatively among the BRICS member, is a small. If you consider India, China, Russia, Brazil, and for Trump, as I mentioned earlier, South Africa is growing undoubtedly, but not much, holds importance, as China and rest of the, as we saw, for example, India, or Russia. Now is, we see how's happening there actually. So I don't think that that's coming primarily because of that. I would also like to mention here that this is not the first time that Trump is unhappy with the ICC. No, it's not the first time. Or Trump is unhappy with the BRICS. No, Trump was unhappy even in his first term, 2017 to 21.
Yeah.
He did.
Unfortunately, Dr. Khan, I'm so sorry to cut you off there. I'm so sorry. This is all the time we have for this discussion. Hopefully we can get you back and continue to flesh this out. Really appreciate your time and your insights this evening. Thank you so much. That's Dr. Kashif Khan.